I used to believe that raising my children with unconditional love would guarantee their gratitude later in life. What a beautiful delusion that was. The day I overheard my eldest son Jacob referring to me as financial dead weight while speaking to his wife on the phone was the day 40 years of maternal devotion crumbled beneath my feet. But what he never anticipated was that this supposedly frail 68-year-old widow wouldn't just silently accept his betrayal. No, I had different plans. For the $2 million family trust that my late husband Robert had left in my care. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, I think you're getting confused again, Jacob said dismissively. When I confronted him about property documents I'd found in his briefcase during his last visit. Rebecca and I are just trying to help organize your finances. You've been struggling lately. I hadn't been struggling with anything except their thinly veiled contempt. What my son failed to realize was that before becoming a mother to 8 children, I'd been the valedictorian of my accounting class and had helped Robert build his construction business from nothing. But time has a way of making people forget who you really are. My name is Martha Sullivan. For 40 years, my identity was consumed by motherhood, making lunches, attending soccer games, bandaging scraped knees, helping with science projects, and later, planning weddings and welcoming grandchildren. When Robert died of a heart attack, 15 years ago, I became both mother and father to our youngest children who were still at home. I never once complained. Family was everything to me. The first indication that something was wrong came during last Thanksgiving's family gathering at our home in Oak Ridge. All 8 of my children had returned with their spouses and children, a cacophony of laughter, arguments, and memories filling every corner of our colonial house in the historic district. I'd prepared for weeks, polishing silver that had been in Robert's family for generations, preparing everyone's favorite dishes, and creating personalized gift baskets for each family. I was in the kitchen, hands deep in pie dough, when I overheard Jacob and Rebecca in the adjacent dining room. "How much longer do you think she can manage in this house by herself?" Rebecca's voice carried a note of impatience rather than concern. "Not much longer," Jacob replied. "She's already forgetting things. Did you notice she called Nathan Thomas twice today?" I paused, flour dusting my hands. One simple name mix-up between my youngest sons, and suddenly I was mentally incompetent? "The property taxes on this place must be astronomical," Rebecca continued. "And it's ridiculous for one person to rattle around at a 5-bedroom house. Once we move her to assisted living, we can sell this place and split the proceeds. The neighborhood has appreciated like crazy," Jacob said, his voice dropping lower. "But we need to be careful about the trust. As long as she's the trustee, she controls everything." The rolling pin trembled in my hand. I'd raised Jacob from infancy, nursed him through chicken pox and broken hearts, helped him through college, loaned him money for his first house. Now he was plotting to strip me of my home and independence as if I were nothing more than an inconvenient financial obstacle. I said nothing that day. I served the pie with a smile, kissed my grandchildren, and waved goodbye as each family departed. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. That night, I sat alone in Robert's study, his photograph watching over me as I pulled out the family trust documents from the safe. Robert had been meticulous about our finances. The trust contained our home, Robert's life insurance payout, his business interests, now managed by Jacob, the lakeside cabin at Silver Lake, and various investments, all totaling approximately $2 million. As trustee, I had significant discretion over these assets, though they were ultimately intended to benefit all our children equally after my passing. Or at least, that had been the plan. The following week, Jacob and Rebecca invited me to dinner at the Copper Kettle, Oak Ridge's most upscale restaurant. I knew immediately something was off. They never invited me to dinner unless they wanted something. "Mom, we've been thinking," Jacob began after our entrees arrived. "That big house?" Must be so much work for you. I took a deliberate bite of salmon, saying nothing. Rebecca's sister works at Sunnyside Meadows, he continued, referring to an assisted living facility on the outskirts of town. She says they have a lovely one-bedroom opening up next month. We've put down a deposit to hold it for you. Mayai, fork paused midway to my mouth. You put down a deposit? Without discussing it with me first? Rebecca jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet. We wanted to surprise you. It's a gorgeous community with people your age. You won't have to worry about maintenance or cooking or cleaning. How thoughtful, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. And what would happen to my house? Jacob and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. Well, Jacob cleared his throat. The sensible thing would be to sell it. The market's hot right now, and that money could pay for your care for years to come. I see. I dabbed my lips with the napkin. And the cabin at Silver Lake? That? Old place? Rebecca waved dismissively. It needs so many repairs. Probably best to sell that too. I nodded thoughtfully. And who would manage these transactions? Since I'd be busy settling into my new one-bedroom paradise. I could handle everything, Jacob offered immediately. As executor of Dad's business interests, I'm already familiar with the family finances. What Jacob conveniently forgot was that Robert had made me trustee, not him. Jacob merely managed the construction company's day-to-day operations, a company that existed in its current form because of my bookkeeping and client relationship management during the difficult early years. That's very generous of you, I said, smiling. Let me think about it. The next day, I visited Patricia Morgan, our family attorney. Unlike Jacob, Patricia remembered exactly who I was and what I'd contributed to building our family's wealth. Martha, it's always good to see you, she said, ushering me into her downtown office. What can I help you with today? I placed the trust documents on her desk. I'd like to understand my options for modifying the family trust. Patricia raised an eyebrow. May I ask why? Let's just say I'm concerned about asset protection and ensuring my wishes are respected. For the next hour, Patricia walked me through my options. As trustee, I had significant latitude to change beneficiary distributions, add conditions, even remove beneficiaries in cases of attempted exploitation. Robert had trusted my judgment implicitly. Whatever changes you're considering, Martha, proceed carefully, Patricia advised. Family trusts can become lightning rods for conflict. The conflict already exists, I replied quietly. They just don't know I'm aware of it yet. When I returned home, Rusty, my golden retriever, greeted me with his usual enthusiasm. Robert had brought him home as a puppy just months before his death, and in many ways, Rusty had become my most loyal companion during widowhood. I scratched behind his ears, his presence grounding me as I considered my next steps. That evening, my phone rang. It was Daniel, my second oldest, calling from Chicago, where he worked as a financial consultant. Mom, Jacob told me about Sunnyside Meadows. Are you really considering moving? His voice carried genuine concern. Unlike Jacob, Daniel had always been more sensitive to others' feelings. But he was also easily influenced by his older brother. I'm considering many things, Daniel. I replied carefully. It's just, the house is so big for one person, and property taxes in the historic district are insane. I almost laughed. Had they all rehearsed the same talking points? I managed just fine. The taxes are paid from the trust, as you know. Right, but he hesitated. That money could be stretching further, and we're worried about you being alone. I'm not alone. I have Rusty, my literacy students at the community center, my book club, and my gardening friends. I paused. When was the last time you visited, Daniel? Just you, not for a holiday? The silence that followed was answer enough. I thought so, I said gently. I appreciate your concern, but I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's study again, this time pulling out photo albums. 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls, from Jacob at 47 down to Nathan at 30, each with their own personalities, dreams, and challenges, each nursed, educated, and launched into adulthood largely by my efforts after Robert died. The irony wasn't lost on me. When they were young and needed everything, no one questioned my competence. I managed a household budget, coordinated multiple schedules, helped with homework across every subject, and still found time to support Robert's business. Now that I wanted nothing more than peace and independence in my final decades, suddenly, I was deemed incapable. The next morning, Jacob called again. "Mom, I've been thinking." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "It might make sense for Rebecca and me to move into the house with you instead. We could help with maintenance, and you wouldn't have to be alone." I almost admired the tactical shift. When the frontal assault failed, he tried flanking. "What? About your own home?" I asked innocently. "We could rent it out. The extra income would help everyone." "Help everyone, or help you?" I wondered silently. "That's a generous offer, Jacob. Let me think about it." 2 days later, Olivia, my daughter called from her hospital in Detroit. "Mom, Jacob mentioned you've been having memory issues. I could refer you to a great neurologist." I gripped the phone tighter. What specific memory issues did Jacob mention? "Well, mixing up names, forgetting conversations, normal aging stuff, but best to check, right?" I thought back to Thanksgiving. One name mix-up between my youngest sons, who even as children had been mistaken for each other. "Olivia, do you remember when you were 16 and crashed the car after that party you weren't supposed to attend?" "Of course. And who convinced your father to understand it was an accident and not punish you?" "You did, Mom. And last month when you called to discuss Benjamin's college options, which schools did I suggest based on his interest in marine biology?" Olivia was silent for a moment. "UCSD, University of Washington, and Florida Atlantic." "Does that sound like someone with memory issues?" "No," she admitted. "But Jacob seemed so concerned." "Jacob is concerned about the trust, not my well-being," I said, finally giving voice to what I knew was true. The line went quiet. "Mom, that's a serious accusation." "It is, and I don't make it lightly." After hanging up, I sat on my back porch, watching Rusty chase squirrels across the yard. The property had been our home for over 40 years. Robert and I had planted those oak trees together when Jacob was just a baby. The children's height marks still adorned the kitchen doorframe. This wasn't just real estate. It was the physical manifestation of our family's history. And Jacob wanted to liquidate it for cash. That weekend, I drove to the lakeside cabin at Silver Lake, about an hour outside Oak Ridge. The cabin had been our sanctuary during the children's growing up years. Summers spent swimming, fishing, and gathering around campfires. Robert and I had purchased it when land was cheap, and now the waterfront property was worth nearly as much as our primary home. As I unlocked the door, the familiar scent of pine and old wood welcomed me. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the windows. It had been almost 2 years since anyone had used the cabin. Everyone was too busy with their own lives now. I walked down to the dock, remembering how Robert had taught each child to swim in these waters, how we'd celebrated Matthew's college acceptance with a bonfire right on this shore, how Sophia had announced her pregnancy during our last family gathering here before Robert's death. These memories deserved better than to be converted to cash and divided 8 ways. On Monday morning, I called Patricia Morgan again. "I'd like to move forward with the trust modifications we discussed," I said firmly. "Are you certain, Martha? These changes will cause significant reactions." I'm counting on it, I replied. When can we finalize the paperwork? Over the next 2 weeks, I executed my plan methodically. First, I visited 3 different neurologists who all confirmed what I already knew. I was cognitively sharp, with only the most minor age-appropriate memory changes. I had their evaluations notarized and added to my file. Next, I cataloged every family heirloom, photograph, and meaningful item in the house, creating a detailed inventory with photographs. I visited my bank and updated all my accounts, removing Jacob as a contingent signatory, something Robert had suggested years ago, just in case, that now seemed remarkably prescient. I also began discreetly moving certain valuables to a safety deposit box, jewelry Robert had given me, his watch collection, and important documents. Not because I planned to hide assets, but because I no longer trusted Jacob to respect boundaries. The real challenge came when Jacob and Rebecca invited themselves over for Sunday dinner. They arrived with what appeared to be measuring tape and a notebook. Just thought we'd get some preliminary measurements, Rebecca explained brightly when I caught her measuring my living room windows. In case we move in to help you. I smiled and said nothing, continuing to prepare dinner as if I hadn't noticed Rebecca sketching a furniture layout that conveniently eliminated my reading chair and Robert's desk. During dinner, Jacob cleared his throat. Mom, I was thinking it might make sense for me to take over as trustee, just to make things easier for you. I took a sip of water. Easier in what way? Well, managing all those investments, property taxes, insurance, it's a lot to keep track of. Strange you should mention that, I replied calmly. I just reviewed everything with Patricia last week. All the accounts are in perfect order. Jacob's fork paused midway to his mouth. You met with Patricia? Why? Just a routine review. She complimented me on how well I've managed the trust since your father died. Rebecca jumped in. Martha, Jacob is just trying to help. You should be enjoying your retirement, not worrying about financial matters. I smiled at her. But I enjoy financial matters, Rebecca. Always have. How do you think Robert's business survived those first difficult years? My accounting background came in quite handy. Jacob and Rebecca exchanged glances. This clearly wasn't going according to their script. After they left, I called each of my other children, one by one. Not to accuse or confront, but to reconnect. I asked about their lives, their children, their hopes and worries. I listened more than I spoke. And at the end of each call, I asked, one simple question. What are your memories of the lake cabin? The responses were illuminating. Daniel remembered learning to fish there. Olivia recalled studying for her MCAT exam on the dock. Matthew talked about proposing to his wife under the big pine tree. Each had powerful emotional connections to that place, connections Jacob had dismissed as irrelevant compared to its monetary value. By the time I finalized the trust modifications with Patricia Morgan, 3 weeks had passed since that dinner at the Copper Kettle. During that time, Jacob had called repeatedly, each time with a new angle on why I should either move to assisted living or allow him and Rebecca to move in with me. Each time, I deflected gently, never revealing my hand. On a crisp autumn morning, I invited all 8 of my children to Sunday dinner. No spouses, no grandchildren, just my children and me. I specified the date in writing, sending formal invitations. That made clear this was not an optional family gathering. To my mild surprise, all 8 confirmed they would attend. Perhaps curiosity had gotten the better of them, or maybe they sensed something important was happening. Whatever their reasons, when Sunday arrived, my dining room table was surrounded by the 8 people I had given my life to raising. Jacob arrived first, his expression a mixture of concern and calculation. What's this about, Mom? Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured him. I just wanted a dinner with all my children. It's been too long. The others arrived in quick succession. Daniel from Chicago, Olivia from Detroit, Matthew from his university town an hour away, Emma with apologies for her husband handling their children alone, Christopher looking harried from his law practice, Thomas flying in from California where his tech company was based, Sophia with paint still under her fingernails from her studio, and finally Nathan in his crisp military uniform, on leave from his posting. As we sat down to eat, I studied their faces, each a unique blend of Robert and me, each carrying forward some aspect of our shared DNA. How had I raised 8 children who looked so much like us but who had grown so distant? "Thank you all for coming," I began after everyone had filled their plates. "It means a lot to have you all under one roof again." "Of course, Mom," Sophia said warmly. At 32, my youngest daughter had always been the most emotionally intuitive of my children. "Is there a special occasion?" "Actually, yes," I replied. "Today marks an important decision about our family's future." Jacob tensed visibly, his fork clattering against his plate. "I've been thinking a lot about your father's legacy," I continued. "About the trust he established and what it was meant to accomplish." "Mom," Jacob interrupted, "if this is about financial planning, maybe we should discuss this privately first." "No," I said firmly. "This concerns all of you equally." I took a deep breath. "For the past several months, some of you have expressed concerns about my ability to manage my affairs. There have been suggestions that I should relocate to assisted living, that the family home should be sold, that the lake property should be liquidated." Several pairs of eyes darted toward Jacob, who maintained a neutral expression. To be clear, I am not suffering from memory loss or cognitive decline. I have evaluations from 3 separate neurologists confirming this. I removed the reports from a folder beside me and placed them on the table. I am perfectly capable of managing my own life and the family trust. "No one's saying you're not capable, Mom," Daniel interjected, though he wouldn't meet my eyes. "Actually, that's exactly what's been implied," I corrected gently, "and it's led me to reevaluate how the family trust should be structured." The room went silent. This was clearly not what any of them had expected. Effective immediately, I've made several modifications to the trust, all legally executed and binding. I opened another folder and began distributing documents to each child. Rather than waiting until after my death, I'm allocating portions of the trust now, with specific conditions. Jacob half rose from his chair. "You can't do that without—" "I'm the trustee, Jacob," I interrupted quietly. "Your father gave me full discretionary authority, which Patricia Morgan has confirmed is legally sound." As my children began reading the documents before them, I explained the changes. The lake property will not be sold. Instead, it's being placed in a separate trust for the shared use of all family members and their descendants in perpetuity. None of you can sell it or borrow against it. It will remain a gathering place for this family for generations to come. Sophia looked up, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom. That place means everything to us." I nodded, continuing. "As for this house, it remains mine until I choose otherwise. When that time comes, it will be sold and the proceeds will fund a scholarship foundation in your father's name, specifically for single parents pursuing higher education." Jacob's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is ridiculous. Dad never intended—" "Your father intended for me to make the best decisions for this family," I cut in sharply, "and I'm doing exactly that." I turned to the final part of my announcement. The remaining liquid assets in the trust, approximately $2 to $8 million, will be divided among you, but not equally. A tense silence fell over the table. Each of you will receive a base amount of $200,000. The remaining funds will be distributed according to a formula based on 2 factors: your demonstrated need, and more importantly, your demonstrated care and concern for me over the past 5 years. I met each pair of eyes around the table. I've kept detailed records of every visit, every call, every offer of help. Some of you have remained actively involved in my life, others have not. The distributions reflect this reality. This is outrageous, Jacob sputtered. You're playing favorites with Dad's money. No, I replied calmly. I'm acknowledging the truth of our relationships. Actions have consequences, Jacob. Your actions especially. The room erupted into chaos. Jacob shouting about contesting the changes, Daniel trying to calculate his share, Olivia attempting to mediate. Through it all, I remained calm, watching the predictable storm I had unleashed. Only when the initial shock had subsided did I speak again. There's one more thing. I reached down beside my chair and lifted Rusty into my lap, scratching his ears. In the event of my death or incapacitation, Rusty's care will be assigned to Sophia, along with a $50,000 stipend for his expenses. Sophia nodded solemnly, understanding the responsibility I was entrusting to her. And for those wondering, I added, Patricia has arranged for an independent trustee to take over should anything happen to me. None of you will control these assets or make decisions about my care. The dinner ended soon after, my children departing in various states of shock, anger, or quiet contemplation. Jacob stormed out without saying goodbye, Rebecca texting me furiously within the hour about tearing the family apart. Others lingered, asking questions, trying to understand my reasoning. Nathan, my youngest, was the last to leave. He hugged me tightly at the door. You did the right thing, Mom, he whispered. Dad would be proud. As I cleared the dishes alone that night, I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. I hadn't raised my children to value money over family, yet somehow the promise of inheritance had revealed characters I barely recognized. That night, I sat in Robert's study, his photograph watching over me as I sipped a glass of his favorite, bourbon. Well, Robert, I said to the empty room, I did what needed to be done. In the soft lamplight, I could almost imagine him nodding in agreement, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners the way they always did when he was proud of me. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, coating our oak trees in a gentle white blanket. Change was coming, to our family, to our legacy, to everything we had built. But for the first time in months, I felt truly at peace with whatever might come next. Because after raising 8 children alone, being called a burden, and changing the family trust, I had finally reclaimed something precious, my own voice. 2 weeks after the family dinner, the snow had melted, leaving behind that peculiar Midwest winter stillness. The neighborhood seemed suspended in gray, not quite autumn anymore, not fully winter yet. I sat at my kitchen table, a stack of envelopes. Before me, most bearing Jacob's law firm's letterhead. I hadn't opened them. There was no need. Their contents were predictable. Legal threats, emotional manipulation, perhaps even preliminary paperwork challenging my mental competence. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Through the frosted glass panel, I recognized Emma's slender silhouette. Of all my children, Emma had been the hardest to read at the dinner. She'd remained quiet, her expression carefully neutral, as the others had argued around her. "Come in," I called, unlocking the door. "I just made tea." Emma stepped inside, unwinding a hand-knit scarf, one I'd made her years ago, from around her neck. At 38, she had my cheekbones and Robert's thoughtful eyes, though perpetual worry had begun etching fine lines around them. "You're not answering your phone," she said, following me to the kitchen. "Everyone's been trying to reach you." "I needed some quiet," I replied, pouring her a cup of Earl Grey. "Time to think." Emma glanced at the pile of unopened letters. "Jacob's losing his mind, Mom. He's talking about a psychiatric evaluation, conservatorship. Rebecca's already called 3 different elder care attorneys." I stirred honey into my tea, unsurprised. "And what do you think, Emma?" She hesitated, cradling the warm mug between her palms. I don't know what to think. Jacob, says you're punishing him for trying to help you, that the trust modifications are evidence of paranoid thinking. And my neurological evaluations? He says you could have fooled those doctors, that you're still sharp for short periods but becoming erratic. I nodded, sipping my tea calmly. How convenient. Emma studied my face carefully. The thing is, Mom, you don't seem erratic to me. You seem determined. I am, I confirmed. For perhaps the first time since your father died, I'm thinking clearly about what I want, not just what everyone else needs. She fidgeted with her mug. Jacob says you've destroyed the family, that you've turned us against each other. Jacob confuses family with access to money, I replied. If redistributing assets destroys us, then we weren't much of a family. To begin with. Emma's eyes welled with unexpected tears. He's organizing a family meeting without you, to discuss what to do about the situation. The situation being me, I clarified. She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. And he's asked you to convince me to undo the trust changes. Another nod. I reached across the table and covered Emma's hand with mine. You have 4 children, Emma. You've dedicated your life to raising them while John built his business. You sacrificed your own career opportunities to be there for every soccer game and school play. She looked up, surprised by this turn in conversation. I see you, I continued gently. I've always seen you. That's why your allocation from the trust is among the largest, to fund the photography business you've always dreamed of starting once the twins leave for college next year. Emma's hand trembled beneath mine. How did you know about that? You mentioned it at Christmas 3 years ago while helping me with dishes. No one else was listening, but I was. A tear slipped down her cheek. I thought you'd forgotten. I forget names sometimes, Emma. I misplace my keys. I don't forget my children's dreams. She withdrew her hand, wiping her eyes. Jacob says you're playing us against each other, using money to control us. Jacob has always been threatened by anything he can't control, I observed. But ask yourself this. Who's actually trying to control whom here? The person making sure everyone's needs are considered, or the person attempting to seize control of all assets and decisions? Emma was silent for a long moment. The family meeting is Sunday at his house. I know you feel obligated to go, I said, standing to refill my cup. Just remember, in families, precedents matter. The way your siblings treat me today is teaching your children how they can treat you tomorrow. After Emma left, I bundled up and took Rusty for his afternoon walk. The crisp air cleared my head as we followed our usual route through Cedar Springs Park. The bare trees stood like sentinels against the pale sky, their branches etched in stark relief, beautiful in their vulnerability. 3 days later, Patricia. Morgan called with news I'd been expecting. Jacob has filed a petition questioning your capacity to manage the trust, she informed me, her voice professionally neutral. His attorneys are requesting a court-ordered competency evaluation. On what grounds? I asked, though I knew the answer. He's claiming the sudden, irrational changes to the trust distributions, combined with what he characterizes as paranoid. Accusations against family members indicate diminished capacity, I sighed. And his evidence? Testimonials from himself and Rebecca about observed memory lapses, confusion, and mood changes. He's also claiming your decisions are financially unsound and contrary to Robert's wishes. Interesting that he presumes to know Robert's wishes better than his wife of 42 years. Patricia made a non-committal sound. This is just the opening salvo, Martha. I'm confident we can defeat this petition, but you should be prepared for an ugly fight. I've been preparing for 47 years, I replied, since the day Jacob was born. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and logged into my email. A message from Christopher, my lawyer son, sat at the top of my inbox. Unlike Jacob's scorched earth approach, Christopher had always preferred subtlety. The email was brief. Mom, without taking sides, I feel professionally obligated to advise you that Jacob's petition has legal merit. A settlement preserving family harmony might be wiser than protracted litigation. Happy to discuss options. Love, Chris. I smiled faintly at the careful wording. Christopher wasn't directly aligning with Jacob, but he was offering a professional opinion that conveniently supported his brother's position. He was hedging his bets, staying just close enough to Jacob to benefit if Jacob prevailed, while maintaining plausible neutrality. My phone rang again, Thomas this time, calling from California. Mom, he began without preamble. What the hell is happening? Jacob's blowing up the family group chat saying you've lost your mind. Thomas had always been my straight shooter. At 34, he'd built a successful tech company from scratch, without taking a dime from the family, a point of pride for him and for me. I changed the trust allocations based on need and demonstrated care, I explained. Jacob's portion was reduced substantially. He's not taking it well. Thomas snorted. Yeah, no kidding. He's claiming you've drained the trust and are hiding assets. The trust has never been more solvent, I replied. All the financial records are with Patricia. Nothing is hidden. I figured, Thomas said. Look, I don't care about the money. My company's Series C funding just closed. I'm good, but this family civil war is insane. I don't want war, Thomas. I just want respect for my autonomy, my decisions, and the life I've built. Fair enough. He paused. For what it's worth, I told Jacob to back off. Told him if he pursues this guardianship thing, I'll personally fund your legal defense. Warmth spread through my chest. Thank you, Thomas. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get worse before it gets better. He wasn't wrong. That evening, Daniel and Matthew both called, each dancing carefully around direct questions about where they stood, each suggesting family mediation might be the answer. I listened patiently to their concerns, expressing appreciation for their perspectives without committing to any course of action. They were following the path of least resistance, avoiding open conflict while hoping someone else would solve the problem. The next morning brought a surprise visitor. Nathan, my youngest, still in his military uniform. He'd driven straight from the airport to my house. I extended my leave, he explained, setting his duffel bag in the foyer. Figured, you could use reinforcements. At 30, Nathan had Robert's steady temperament and unflinching moral clarity. Of all my children, he'd been the most independent, never asking for financial help even when I knew his military salary stretched thin. You didn't have to come, I said, though relief washed through me at the sight of him. Actually, I did. He followed me to the kitchen, accepting the coffee I offered. Jacob called me, tried to recruit me to his side. Said some things about you I won't repeat. I raised an eyebrow. And I told him he was out of line, Nathan said simply. Reminded him that questioning the competence of a woman who single-handedly raised 8 children while running a business was not just insulting but delusional. I smiled into my coffee cup. I imagine that went over well. About as well as you'd expect. Nathan shrugged. He threatened to cut me out of my rightful share if I didn't support him. I told him you'd already made it clear what my share was, and I was fine with it. You haven't even seen the numbers, I pointed out. Don't need to, Nathan replied. Whatever you decided is fair. You've never cheated any of us. I studied my youngest son's face. The same strong jawline as Robert's, the same unwavering gaze. Jacobs filed a petition questioning my competence. Nathan nodded. I know. Olivia told me. She's on the fence, by the way. Doctor in her says the neurological evaluations should be definitive, but big sister in her defers to Jacob out of habit. And Sophia? Flying in tomorrow. She texted that she's staying with Mom, no discussion. I felt a knot in my chest. Loosen slightly. Not alone then. Not completely. I've made up the guest rooms, I said. Yours is just as you left it. Nathan grinned. Star Wars posters and all? I might have updated the bedding, but otherwise, yes. As promised, Sophia. Arrived the next day, her artist's portfolio in one hand, a suitcase in the other. At 32, she was a study in creative chaos. Paint-stained jeans, mismatched earrings, and a brilliant smile that lit her entire face. The family group me is nuclear, she announced, dropping her bags in the hallway. Jacob's posting screenshots of your bank withdrawals from 2018 as evidence. I'd block him, but the drama is too entertaining. I frowned. How does he have access to my bank records? Sophia's expression turned serious. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Remember when you broke your wrist 3 years ago? Jacob convinced you to add him to your accounts temporarily so he could help manage bills. Memory clicked into place. I removed him months later. Apparently not from everything, Sophia said grimly. He's got transaction histories going back years. A chill settled over me. What else had I overlooked? What other vulnerabilities had I left exposed during moments of trust? I need to check all my accounts, I said, moving toward Robert's study. Already handled, Nathan called from the living room, where he was setting up his laptop. I've got a buddy who specializes in financial security for deployed personnel. He's reviewing everything remotely. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, credit reports. We'll have a complete assessment by morning. I looked between my 2 youngest children, feeling a surge of gratitude. They'd stepped up without hesitation, bringing their unique strengths to my defense. Thank you both, I said simply. Sophia squeezed my hand. We've got you, Mom. Always have. That evening, the 3 of us sat in the living room, sharing pizza and strategies. Nathan had created a detailed timeline of Jacob's escalating behaviors over the past year, identifying patterns I hadn't fully recognized. See here, he pointed to his notes. After Dad's company landed the Westridge contract last spring, Jacob started visiting more frequently, always asking about the trust, suggesting updates to your will. Sophia nodded. And when you didn't take the bait, he switched to the health angle. Remember when he brought that neurologist friend to Sunday dinner, just to meet the family? The pieces were fitting together with disturbing clarity. Jacob's campaign hadn't begun with Thanksgiving. It had been building for over a year, laying groundwork, testing boundaries, documenting vulnerable moments. The question is, Nathan continued, how far is he willing to go? Because this competency petition is just the beginning. He'll escalate, I said with certainty. Jacob doesn't retreat. He doubles down. Sophia leaned forward. Then we need to be ready. For anything. The next morning brought confirmation of my fears. Nathan's security review revealed Jacob had accessed not just my bank records, but my email, calendar, and even my medical patient portal. He'd been systematically collecting information, building his case in the shadows. It's actually impressive in a disturbing way, Nathan observed as we reviewed the findings over breakfast. He's been playing a long game. I felt violated in ways I couldn't articulate. My privacy invaded, my trust betrayed by the child I'd once cradled in my arms through countless nights of colic and fever. We need to lock everything down, I said, pushing away my untouched toast. Change all passwords, secure all accounts. Already in progress, Nathan assured me. By this afternoon, he'll be completely locked out. Sophia, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly looked up from her phone. Jacob just texted me. The family meeting at his house is still happening Sunday. He says, and I quote, "Mom's mental state requires immediate intervention. Be there or accept responsibility for what happens next." Charming, Nathan muttered. I considered our options. Could be useful to have someone there, to know what they're planning. Sophia and Nathan exchanged glances. "I'll go," Sophia volunteered. "They'll expect me to be the emotional artist, not paying attention to details. I can play that role." "It's risky," I cautioned. "Jacob's always been good at manipulating emotions." "Trust me," Sophia smiled grimly. 4 years of therapy after my divorce has made me pretty immune to manipulation. The remainder of the week passed in tense preparation. Patricia Morgan filed our opposition to Jacob's petition, including the neurological evaluations and affidavits from my long-standing physicians. I changed my banking relationships completely, moving to new institutions where Jacob had no connections. Nathan installed security cameras around the property, and we changed the locks, precautions that would have seemed paranoid just months ago, but now felt necessary. Unexpected support came from unlikely quarters. My literacy students at the community center organized a letter-writing campaign to the probate judge, attesting to my mental acuity. My book club sent a joint statement detailing my ongoing contributions to their monthly literary analyses. Even my gardening friends submitted photographs of the elaborate planting schedule I'd designed for the community garden. Hardly the work of someone with diminished capacity. Sunday arrived with a crystalline winter chill. Sophia dressed carefully for the family meeting, choosing an outfit that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "How do I look?" she asked, twirling in a flowery dress that belied her usual artistic edge. "Like you're trying too hard to appear harmless," Nathan observed. Sophia grinned. "Perfect." As she prepared to leave, I hugged her tightly. "Be careful. Jacob's cornered, which makes him dangerous." "I know," she replied softly. "That's why I'm wearing a recording device, Nathan's idea." I looked to my youngest son in surprise. "Single-party consent state," he explained with a shrug. "Perfectly legal to record conversations you're part of without notifying others." After Sophia left, Nathan and I sat in Robert's study waiting. I tried to focus on a book, but the words swam before my eyes. What was Jacob saying about me to my other children? What narrative was he spinning to justify his actions? "They'll try to frame this as an intervention," Nathan said, breaking the silence. "Position themselves as concerned family members trying to help a declining parent who doesn't recognize her own limitations." "The classic play," I agreed. "Paint me as simultaneously beloved but incompetent. It's effective because it's hard to fight without seeming combative, which they'll claim is further evidence of your irrational behavior." I set my book aside. "When did you become so versed in family psychology?" Nathan's expression turned somber. "Military deployments teach you a lot about human nature under pressure. Who breaks, who stands firm, who sacrifices others to save themselves." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Mom, can we talk? Just us. It's important." I showed Nathan the message. Jacob's deployed his secret weapon. Olivia had always been Jacob's closest ally among my children. As the family doctor, her medical opinion carried outsized weight in family discussions about health. "Could be a trap," Nathan warned. "Get you alone, document any slip of the tongue." "Or she genuinely wants to understand my side," I countered. "We can't assume everyone's against us." After brief deliberation, I replied to Olivia, suggesting we meet at the neutral territory of Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital's cafeteria, where she worked. Public, but private enough for conversation. She agreed immediately. "I'm coming with you," Nathan insisted. "I'll sit separately. Keep watch." I didn't argue. Caution had become our watchword. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty. When I arrived, just coming off the Sunday lunch rush, Olivia was already seated at a corner table, still in her white coat, dark circles beneath her eyes suggesting she'd come straight from a shift. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as I sat across from her. "Of course." I kept my tone neutral, waiting. Olivia fidgeted with her coffee cup. I've been reviewing your neurological evaluations. And? They're thorough, comprehensive. If I didn't know you, I'd say they definitively establish cognitive competence. But since you do know me, since I do, she continued carefully, I've been trying to reconcile them with what Jacob's been saying, the examples he's given of confusion, memory lapses, judgment issues. I folded my hands on the table. Such as? He says you forgot Christopher's birthday last year. I didn't forget it. I was in the hospital with pneumonia. I called him the next day and sent a gift the following week. Olivia blinked. He didn't mention the pneumonia. Convenient omission. He also said you've been giving money to strangers, large amounts. I raised an eyebrow. I've increased my charitable donations, yes. Is generosity now a symptom of dementia? It can be, when it's excessive or out of character, Olivia replied, her professional tone asserting itself. The literacy program needed new materials. The community garden needed irrigation. These aren't random handouts, Olivia. They're calculated investments in things that matter to me. She studied me closely. And the trust changes, dividing assets unequally among your children? That doesn't strike you as potentially inflammatory. Of course it's inflammatory, I acknowledged. But it's also fair. If your brother received millions from the trust while rarely calling or visiting me, while others who've remained actively involved received less, how would that be just? Olivia looked down at her hands. Jacob says you're punishing him for trying to help you. Is that what he calls it? Interesting. I call it attempting to seize control of my assets while I'm still very much alive and competent. A flash of uncertainty crossed her face. He's very convincing, Mom. When he talks about how worried he is about you, how he's just trying to protect you from bad decisions. I raised a persuasive son, I agreed. But ask yourself this. If I were truly incapacitated, wouldn't the kind thing be to work with me to find solutions, rather than filing legal petitions and holding family meetings without me? Olivia didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I told Jacob I couldn't support the competency petition, that the medical evidence doesn't support it. Relief washed through me. Thank you for that. Professional integrity. He didn't take it well, she continued. Said I was betraying the family, that as the executor of Dad's company, he's the one who determines what Dad would have wanted. Your father wanted me to be happy and secure, I said gently. Not controlled by our children. Olivia nodded slowly. I should get back to my rounds, but Mom, be careful. Jacob's not giving up. As she stood to leave, she hesitated, then leaned down to hug me, something she rarely did as an adult. I'm sorry I doubted you, she whispered. It won't happen again. I watched her walk away, white coat billowing slightly, shoulders squared with renewed purpose. One child at a time, I thought. One bridge rebuilt. Nathan joined me as I left. The cafeteria. Productive? I think so, I replied. Olivia's withdrawn her support for the competency petition. Good. That weakens his medical argument substantially. As we walked to the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Meeting over. Coming to you. Worse than we thought. Nathan and I exchanged worried glances. Let's get home, he said, quickening his pace. We arrived to find Sophia already there, pacing the living room, her earlier demure outfit replaced by her usual jeans and sweater. It's not just about the money, she said without preamble. It's about the company. I sank into an armchair. What about the company? Jacob's in trouble. Big trouble. She ran a hand through her hair. Apparently, he's been making unauthorized investments with company funds, high-risk ventures that have gone south. How bad? Nathan asked. Bad enough that if the board finds out, he's done. Criminal charges, kind of bad. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. He needs liquid assets to cover the shortfall before the next audit. Sophia nodded grimly. And guess where he thought he could get a few million? No questions asked? The family trust, I whispered. Bingo. He's been planning to liquidate assets, borrow what he needs, then replace it before anyone noticed. But my trust modifications blocked his access, I realized. Exactly. Which is why he's suddenly so concerned about your mental competence. He needs control of those assets, fast. Nathan let out a low whistle. This changes everything. It's not just family drama anymore. It's potential financial fraud. I closed my eyes, absorbing the magnitude of what we'd discovered. My eldest son wasn't just being controlling or greedy. He was desperate, cornered, which made him infinitely more dangerous. There's more, Sophia continued, her voice shaking slightly. He's got a backup plan if the competency challenge fails. He thinks he's found a loophole in Dad's original trust documents that could invalidate your role as trustee. That's impossible, I protested. Patricia vetted everything. He claims there's a clause regarding substantially altered distributions that requires unanimous beneficiary approval. Nathan was already typing on his laptop. I'll contact Patricia. She needs to review this immediately. I sat back, a strange calm settling over me. After weeks of questioning myself, of wondering if I was overreacting, the truth was finally exposed. Jacob's concern had never been for me. It had been for himself, for covering his own misdeeds at my expense. What did the others say? I asked Sophia. When Jacob explained his concerns? Daniel seemed skeptical but said little. Christopher was more interested in the legal strategy than the reasons behind it. Matthew looked uncomfortable, but deferred. To Jacob, as usual. Emma just cried. And you? Sophia smiled thinly. I played my role. The emotional little sister, torn between loyalties. He bought it completely. We need to move quickly, Nathan interjected, looking up from his phone. Patricia's reviewing the trust documents now, but she says we should prepare for Jacob to file additional motions this week. I nodded, my mind already racing ahead. Whatever Jacob was planning, whatever desperate measures he might take, I needed to be prepared. The stakes had just gone from personal to potentially criminal. Nathan. Call Thomas, I decided. He needs to know what's happening with the company his investments support. Sophia. Send the recording to Patricia. She needs every piece of evidence we can provide. As my youngest children sprang into action, I walked to the window, gazing out at the winter landscape. The trees stood bare against the darkening sky, stripped of pretense, their true forms revealed in stark clarity. Like my family, I thought. Stripped of illusions, showing their true natures at last. The morning light spilled across my kitchen table where Patricia Morgan had spread out the original trust documents, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She'd arrived at 7, coffee in hand, determined to find the supposed loophole Jacob had mentioned. I've been over these documents at least a dozen times since Robert died, she muttered, flipping through tabbed sections. There is no clause requiring unanimous beneficiary approval for distribution changes. Nathan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Could he be bluffing? Trying to intimidate Mom into backing down? Possibly, Patricia conceded. But Jacob wouldn't risk his legal reputation on something easily disproven. I poured more. Coffee for everyone, my hand steady despite the tension. What about amendments? Robert updated the trust several times over the years. Patricia paused, her finger tracing down a list of dates. There was a codicil added about 14 years ago, right before that big Eastlake project. She flipped to another section, scanning rapidly. It mainly addressed how business assets would be handled if Robert died during active projects. That's around when Jacob first joined the company, I recalled, thinking back. Robert wanted to protect him if something happened mid-project. Wait, Patricia said suddenly, her voice shifting. This is interesting. We all leaned closer as she pointed to a paragraph buried deep in the legal text. There's language here about maintaining the integrity of family business interests, and a provision that any trust amendments affecting business assets require approval from the standing CEO of Sullivan Construction. Nathan frowned. That would be Jacob now. The provision only applies to business assets, Patricia clarified, not personal property, investments, or other holdings. But Jacob could argue that by reducing his distribution, you're indirectly affecting his ability to lead the company, Sophia observed from where she sat sketching at the end of the table. Patricia nodded slowly. It's thin, but it's something he could potentially leverage. I absorbed this information, turning it over in my mind. So he can't invalidate the entire trust modification, but he could potentially challenge how it affects his role at Sullivan Construction. Essentially, yes. He'd need to prove that your changes directly impact company operations. Thomas's voice suddenly joined the conversation from Nathan's laptop screen. We'd called him in on video conference from California, and he'd been listening silently until now. He can absolutely make that case, Thomas said grimly, because he's been using company funds to cover personal expenses for years. We all turned toward the screen. I've been digging through the financial statements, Thomas continued. Jacob's been paying himself performance bonuses that weren't approved by the board. He's also been allocating company resources to personal projects, renovations on his and Rebecca's vacation home in Aspen for one. That's embezzlement, Nathan said. Gray area, Thomas corrected. As CEO, he has some discretion over compensation packages and resource allocation. But he's definitely pushing ethical boundaries, if not legal ones. I closed my eyes briefly, a wave of disappointment washing over me. So, if his trust distribution is reduced, he loses his personal slush fund and potentially exposes his financial mismanagement, Thomas added. If he suddenly can't maintain his lifestyle, people might start asking questions. Patricia began gathering the documents, her expression thoughtful. This gives us leverage. Jacob's challenging your competence, but he's the one mismanaging company assets. I don't want to destroy him, I said quietly. He's still my son. But you can't let him destroy you either, Sophia countered, setting down her pencil. A heavy silence settled over the kitchen. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hardwood floor, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. We need more information, I decided finally. Concrete evidence of what he's doing with company funds? Thomas nodded from the screen. I'm already on it. As a major investor, I've requested a detailed financial audit. Jacob can't refuse without raising red flags with other board members. He'll know it's coming from our side, Nathan warned. Let him, Thomas replied. Right now, the threat of exposure may be our best protection. After Patricia left with copies of all relevant documents, promising to prepare for Jacob's potential legal maneuvers, I sat alone in Robert's study. The weight of everything we'd uncovered pressed down upon me like a physical burden. How had we reached this point? When had my firstborn son, the baby I'd nursed through nights of colic, the boy who'd proudly brought home handmade Mother's Day cards, the young man who'd tearfully thanked me at his college graduation, become someone who would threaten his own mother's autonomy for financial gain? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Sophia stood at the door, holding 2 mugs of tea. Penny for your thoughts, she said, offering me one of the mugs. I'm not sure they're worth that much, I replied, accepting the tea gratefully. She settled into the chair opposite mine. You're thinking about Jacob as a little boy, aren't you? I looked up, startled by her perception. I do the same thing, she admitted. Try to reconcile the brother who taught me to ride a bike with the man who's doing this. Where did I go wrong with him, Sophia? She shook her head firmly. This isn't on you, Mom. Jacob made his choices. But why? We gave him everything. Love, education, opportunities. Maybe that's part of it, Sophia suggested. Jacob never had to struggle for anything. Dad made him CEO based on bloodline, not merit. He's never had to earn his place. I considered this, remembering how Robert had groomed Jacob from an early age to take over the business, perhaps at the expense of developing other aspects of his character. There's something else you should know, Sophia continued, her expression turning serious. When Rebecca arrived at the family meeting yesterday, she was wearing a diamond necklace I've never seen before. Brand new, extravagant. In the middle of a supposed financial crisis? Sophia nodded. Either they're not as desperate as we think, or they're spending everything they can before assets get frozen. I finished grimly. Nathan's friend mentioned unusual credit card activity too. Large purchases at luxury retailers, a down payment on a boat. I set down my tea, a cold certainty settling over me. They're liquidating everything they can get their hands on and converting it to physical assets that would be harder to reclaim in bankruptcy or legal proceedings. That's what we're thinking. They're preparing for something. The implications were clear. Whatever Jacob was involved in, he expected consequences serious enough to warrant hiding assets. This wasn't just about maintaining control anymore. This was about preparing for a financial reckoning. We need to warn the others, I decided. Daniel, Matthew, Christopher, Emma, they deserve to know what their brother is doing before they get pulled into his schemes. Sophia hesitated. Are you sure that's wise? Some of them might still side with Jacob. Then they'll make that choice with full information, I said firmly. No more secrets, no more manipulation. That afternoon, I composed a carefully worded email to my other 4 children, outlining what we'd discovered about Jacob's financial activities without making direct accusations. I included Thomas's preliminary findings about the company finances and Patricia's analysis of the trust documents. I ended with a simple statement. I have never wanted conflict in this family. I only want fairness and transparency. If you have questions, my door is always open. Within an hour, my phone began buzzing with responses. Daniel called first, his financial background giving him immediate insight into the implications. Mom, if what Thomas is saying is true, the company could be in serious trouble, he said, skipping any greeting. Has anyone notified the board? Thomas is handling that aspect, I assured him. Right now, I'm more concerned about how this affects the family. Daniel was quiet for a moment. I feel like an idiot. Jacob convinced me you were slipping mentally, that you needed protection from yourself. He's very persuasive, I said, gently. But I should have known better. Should have asked more questions. His voice tightened with emotion, unusual for my typically reserved second son. I'm sorry, Mom. You're here now, I replied. That's what matters. After Daniel, Christopher called, his lawyer's analytical mind already 3 steps ahead. Jacob's facing potential shareholder lawsuits at minimum, he assessed. Criminal charges at worst. No wonder he's been so desperate to access the trust. Funds. What would you advise? I asked, curious how he would respond. Christopher didn't hesitate. Protect yourself first. Make sure your name can't be associated with any financial improprieties. Then consider a settlement that shields the family from public scandal while holding Jacob accountable. Always the pragmatist, I thought. Always looking for the cleanest resolution rather than the most just one. I'll take that under advisement, I said neutrally. Matthew didn't call. He sent a brief text. Need time to process this. Will call soon. Emma's response was the most emotional. She arrived at my door in tears, her eldest daughter Rachel in tow. I can't believe I almost helped him, she sobbed as we sat in the living room. He made it sound like you were in danger, like we were saving you from yourself. Rachel at 16 watched her mother with concerned eyes. Uncle Jacob said Grandma was sick and confused, she explained to me. He told us kids we needed to be extra patient and not believe everything. You said, My heart contracted painfully. So Jacob had been manipulating even the grandchildren, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state. "I'm not sick or confused, Rachel," I said firmly, meeting her gaze. "I'm just standing up for myself, which sometimes makes people uncomfortable." She nodded, seeming relieved. "That's what Mom said when she read your email, that it all made sense now." Emma wiped her eyes. "I should have trusted my instincts. You've never been anything but sharp and fair." "We all have blind spots when it comes to family," I assured her. After they left, promising to return the next day to help with whatever was needed, Nathan, Sophia, and I gathered in the kitchen to assess where things stood. 4 siblings potentially on our side now, Nathan calculated. Jacob isolated, though Rebecca will stand with him. "Don't count on everyone staying firm if Jacob counterattacks," Sophia warned. "He won't go down without a fight." As if summoned by her words, my phone rang. Jacob's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered on speaker. "Hello, Jacob." "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "Spreading lies about me to the family? Undermining my position at the company?" "I've only shared factual information," I replied, calmly. "Information you should have disclosed yourself." "You have no idea what you're talking about. You're interfering in business matters you don't understand." "I understand misappropriation of funds, Jacob. I understand fiduciary responsibility." He made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a snarl. "You think you've won? This is just beginning. By the time I'm done, you'll be declared incompetent, and I'll have power of attorney over everything." "Is that really the relationship you want with your mother?" I asked quietly. "Threats and legal battles?" "What I want," he said, his voice suddenly cold and clear, "is what Dad promised me. Control of his legacy, the wealth he built, the position he created for me." "Your father never promised you control over me," I corrected. "And he certainly never promised you the right to mistreat me." "Though, this isn't about you," Jacob exploded. "It never has been. This is about what's rightfully mine." In that moment, with those words, something fundamental shifted inside me. The last lingering doubt, the last whisper of maternal guilt, wondering if I'd somehow failed him, evaporated completely. "Nothing is rightfully yours, Jacob," I said, my voice steady and sure. "Not the company. That was a privilege your father granted you. Not the trust money. That was always meant to be shared. And certainly not control over my life or decisions." "You'll regret this," he threatened. "No," I replied softly. "I don't think I will." I ended the call, looking up to find Nathan and Sophia watching me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You okay?" Nathan asked. I nodded, surprised to realize it was true. "I am. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I feel completely certain I'm doing the right thing." Sophia squeezed my hand. "Because you are." That certainty carried me through the turbulent days that followed. As predicted, Jacob escalated his attacks, filing an emergency petition for temporary guardianship that would give him control over my affairs while the competency challenge was pending. Patricia countered immediately, submitting our substantial evidence of my cognitive soundness along with affidavits from Olivia and 2 other physicians. The judge, to Jacob's visible frustration, denied the emergency petition and set a full hearing date for the following month. Outside the courtroom, Jacob caught my arm as I was leaving with Patricia. "This isn't over," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "There are things you don't know, things that will come out." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not afraid of the truth, Jacob." "Are you?" Rebecca appeared beside him, her expression coldly triumphant despite their legal setback. "We've found witnesses, Martha. People who've seen your erratic behavior. The gardening club members you confused with book club members. The bank teller who had to help you balance your checkbook." "Interesting," Patricia interjected smoothly. "We'd be very interested in deposing these witnesses. When can we schedule that? Rebecca's confidence faltered slightly. Our attorneys will be in touch. As they walked away, Patricia muttered, They're bluffing. If they had credible witnesses, they would have included affidavits with the emergency petition. They're desperate, I agreed. The company audit is scheduled for next week. The next day brought unexpected support from a quarter I hadn't anticipated. Howard Thompson, a retired judge I knew from my literacy volunteering, called to invite me to lunch. I hear you're having some legal troubles, he said over soup at the copper kettle. Family issues? News travels fast, I observed. Howard shrugged. Small town. I played golf with Judge Winters yesterday. Your case came up. No details, of course, but he mentioned a competency challenge. I sighed. My eldest son believes I've become incapable of managing my affairs. Or at least, that's what he claims to believe. Howard studied me over his half-moon reading glasses. Having known you for 5 years through Literacy Council, watched you coordinate complex programs and manage substantial budgets, I find that claim dubious at best. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. It means a lot to hear that. I'm not just saying it to be kind, he continued, surprisingly vehement. I went through something similar with my son-in-law after my wife died. Suddenly, I was confused about assets I'd managed successfully for decades. I leaned forward, struck by the parallel. What happened? I fought back, hard. A smile ghosted across his lined face. Turns out judges don't take kindly to transparent attempts to seize control of a competent elder's assets. It's a form of abuse, Martha. Financial elder abuse. The term landed heavily in my consciousness. I hadn't allowed myself to frame Jacob's actions quite so starkly, but Howard's characterization resonated with uncomfortable truth. I've documented everything, I assured him. Every attempt to move me from my home, every suggestion that I'm declining mentally. Good. But you need more than documentation. You need to show the court you're actively engaged, managing complex tasks, making sound decisions. I thought about the trust modifications, the security measures Nathan had implemented, the careful legal strategy Patricia and I had developed. I believe I'm doing that, I said. Howard nodded approvingly. You are. But visibility matters too. The more people who can testify to your capabilities, the stronger your position. That evening, I shared Howard's insights with Nathan and Sophia. We were gathered in the living room, the remnants of dinner. Still on the coffee table, Rusty curled contentedly at my feet. He's right, Nathan agreed. We need to get you more visibly engaged in community activities, demonstrating your capabilities publicly. Sophia was already typing on her laptop. The Arts Council is looking for new board members. With your background in education, you'd be perfect. And the Community Foundation has grant proposals due next month, Nathan added. You could head up the review committee. I felt a spark of excitement at these possibilities, not just as defensive measures, but as meaningful engagements that had nothing to do with the family conflict. Yes to both, I decided. And I want to restart the writing workshop at the Senior Center. I've been thinking about it for months. Sophia looked up, smiling. That's the spirit. Don't just prove Jacob wrong, thrive in spite of him. The next week brought a development none of us had anticipated. Thomas called from the airport, his voice tight with urgency. I'm flying in. There's something you all need to see. 3 hours later, he was spreading documents across my dining room table while Nathan, Sophia, and I looked on. The preliminary audit results came back, he explained, pointing to highlighted sections of financial statements. It's worse than we thought. Jacob hasn't just been using company funds for personal expenses. He's been falsifying project costs, inflating invoices, and pocketing the difference. Nathan whistled softly. That's straight-up fraud. How much? I asked, dreading the answer. At least $7 million over the past 4 years. Thomas replied grimly. Possibly more if we dig deeper. I sank into a chair, the magnitude of Jacob's deception washing over me. This wasn't just financial mismanagement or ethical gray areas. This was criminal activity that could destroy the company Robert had built. From nothing. Does the board know? Thomas nodded. I presented the findings this morning. They've called an emergency session for tomorrow to vote on suspending Jacob pending a full investigation. He'll be desperate now, Sophia warned, cornered. As if confirming her words, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from Daniel. Jacob just called, ranting about conspiracy against him, threatening to burn everything down if pushed. Be careful, Mom. I showed the others the message, a chill settling over the room. We need to secure everything, Nathan said immediately, switching to his military precision. Mom's house, documents, accounts, anything Jacob might try to access in desperation. I'll call Patricia, Thomas volunteered. She needs to know about the audit findings before tomorrow's board meeting. As everyone sprang into action around me, I remained seated, a strange calm descending over my thoughts. The boy I'd raised, the son I'd loved, had become someone I no longer recognized, someone capable of fraud, of threats, of weaponizing family bonds for personal gain. Yet even now, facing the full extent of his betrayal, I felt sorrow rather than anger. Sorrow for the relationship that might have been, for the man he might have become under different circumstances. Sophia noticed my stillness and came to sit beside me. What are you thinking? That I still love him, I admitted quietly, despite everything. And I'm wondering if that makes me a fool. She took my hand. It makes you a mother, a good one. A good mother would have seen this coming, would have raised a son who understood right from wrong. You did, Sophia insisted. The rest of us turned out okay. Jacob made his own choices. Before I could respond, the security system Nathan had installed chimed with an alert. Someone was at the front door. Nathan checked the camera feed on his phone and frowned. It's Rebecca. We exchanged puzzled glances. What could Jacob's wife want at this moment of crisis? I'll talk to her, I decided, rising from my chair. Not alone, Thomas protested. We'll be in the next room, Nathan compromised, but visible enough that she knows you're not isolated. I nodded and went to open the door. Rebecca stood on my porch, her usual polished appearance noticeably disrupted. Her hair was pulled back hastily, her makeup minimal, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. May I come in? She asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I stepped aside, allowing her into the foyer where she could see Nathan and Thomas positioned casually but alertly in the living room entryway. Rebecca noticed them and smiled thinly. Family protection detail? Something like that, I acknowledged. What can I do for you, Rebecca? She fidgeted with her wedding ring, a massive diamond that caught the light even in its nervous movement. I want to talk to you. Alone. Whatever you have to say can be said in front of my children. She hesitated, then nodded sharply. Fine. I came to warn you. Warn me about what? Jacob's not stable right now. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's talking about making sure no one wins. About how, if he goes down, he's taking everyone with him. I studied her face, searching for deception but finding only genuine fear. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Rebecca's composure cracked, just slightly. Because I have children too. Because this has gone too far. I gestured toward the living room. Let's all sit down. Once settled, Rebecca continued. Jacob came home from meeting with the company attorneys in a state I've never seen before. He was. She searched for the word. Unhinged, talking about how everyone had betrayed him, how he'd show them all. Did he threaten specific actions? Nathan asked, his tone professional. He smashed things, his phone, a lamp. Then he took out all our important documents, his gun collection, and left. Wouldn't say where he was going. My blood ran cold. When was this? 2 hours ago. Rebecca twisted her hands in her lap. I tried calling Olivia, but she's on shift. Daniel didn't answer. You were my next option. Thomas was already on his phone, stepping into the hallway to make calls. Nathan moved closer to the window, scanning the street outside. Have you contacted the police? I asked. Rebecca shook her head. And tell them what? That my husband took his legal firearms and left the house angry? They won't do anything until he actually threatens someone directly. She was right, but the knowledge did nothing to ease the growing knot of dread in my stomach. Thank you for coming, I said sincerely. Whatever happens, you did the right thing. Rebecca's carefully maintained facade crumbled completely then, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know about the fraud, she whispered. I swear I didn't. The spending, yes. The manipulation of you, yes. But not outright stealing. I wasn't sure I believed her, but her distress seemed genuine. You should stay here for now, I decided, until we know where Jacob is and what he intends. She looked up, surprised by the offer. You'd let me stay? After everything? You're family, I said simply. And right now, you're afraid. That's enough. The house fell into an uneasy silence after Nathan called the police, despite Rebecca's objections. 2 officers arrived quickly, their faces professionally neutral as they took statements about Jacob's concerning behavior. They promised increased patrols around the neighborhood but confirmed what Rebecca had already said. Without direct threats, their options were limited. Keep your doors locked, the older officer advised as they left. Call immediately if he shows up. I've already activated the security system, Nathan assured him. And we've got people staying with Mom around the clock. After the police left, Rebecca sat hunched on the edge of the sofa, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. The carefully constructed facade of confident entitlement had crumbled completely, revealing the frightened woman beneath. You should call your children, I suggested gently. Make sure they're safe at home. She nodded, reaching for her phone with trembling hands. Jacob wouldn't. He loves the kids. The unfinished thought hung in the air between us. Jacob had already crossed lines none of us thought he would. Who could say with certainty what he might do next? While Rebecca made her calls in the kitchen, Thomas, Nathan, Sophia, and I gathered in Robert's study to assess the situation. I've contacted everyone, Thomas reported. Daniel and his family are staying at a hotel tonight as a precaution. Christopher and Matthew are both out of town on business, so they're away from immediate concern. Emma's husband has taken her and the kids to his parents' home. Olivia? I asked. Still on shift at the hospital. Security there has been notified to watch for Jacob. I nodded, mentally accounting for all my children. What about the company? The board meeting tomorrow? Proceeding as scheduled, Thomas confirmed. Security has been enhanced at headquarters. Jacob's access credentials have been temporarily suspended. Standard protocol when financial irregularities are discovered. Nathan, who had been standing by the window scanning the darkened street, turned to face us. Do we believe Rebecca? That she didn't know about the fraud? I'm not sure, I admitted. She certainly knew about their excessive spending and the attempts to gain control of my assets. But actual criminal activity? It's possible she was in the dark. Either way, Sophia interjected, she's scared enough of Jacob to come warn us. That tells me everything I need to know about how serious this is. No one disagreed with that assessment. What concerns me most, I said slowly, is what Jacob might do to himself. The others exchanged glances. For all his faults, Jacob was still my firstborn. The thought of him alone, desperate, possibly contemplating self-destruction, sent a spear of maternal anguish through my heart. "Nathan, can you trace his phone location?" Thomas asked. "Already tried. It's either turned off or destroyed, like," Rebecca said. "Credit cards? ATM withdrawals?" Nathan shook his head. "Nothing since this morning." A soft knock at the study door interrupted our strategizing. Rebecca stood there, looking exhausted but slightly calmer. "The kids are fine. They're with my sister," she hesitated. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but there's something else you should know." I gestured for her to continue. "Jacob has a cabin," she said. "Not the family one at Silver Lake. A hunting property he bought through an LLC about 3 years. Ago. It's where he goes when things get bad." "Bad how?" Nathan asked sharply. Rebecca's gaze dropped to the floor. "When the pressure gets too much. When he drinks too heavily. When he needs to reset, as he calls it." "Where is this cabin?" Thomas demanded. "About 2 hours north, near Pinewood Ridge." She pulled out her phone and showed us a map location. "It's isolated. No neighbors for at least a mile." The implication hung heavy in the room. A remote location, firearms, a man in crisis. "I'll go," Nathan decided immediately. "I can be there in under 2 hours. "Not alone," Thomas countered. "I'm coming with you." "So am I," said a new voice from the doorway. Daniel stood there, his normally impeccable business attire replaced by jeans and a weathered jacket. "Just got here. Emma called me." I looked at my 3 sons, the military officer, the tech entrepreneur, and the financial consultant, now united in purpose despite their differences. Pride mingled with fear in my chest. "Be careful," I implored. "Jacob's not himself right now." "We know," Nathan assured me. "This isn't our first crisis management operation." As they prepared to leave, gathering flashlights, first aid supplies, and Nathan's satellite phone for the remote area, I pulled Daniel aside. "When did you get back in town?" I asked. "Never left," he admitted. "After I got your email about Jacob's financial activities, I decided to stay close. Been working remotely from the hotel." I squeezed his arm, touched by this revelation. "Thank you." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Should have been here sooner. Should have seen through Jacob's manipulation." "We all have regrets," I said softly. "What matters is what we do now." The 3 of them left shortly after, Nathan driving his rugged SUV with Thomas and Daniel following in a second vehicle. The house felt strangely empty after their departure, despite Sophia's reassuring presence and Rebecca's nervous energy. "They'll find him," Sophia assured me as we watched the taillights disappear down the street. "Nathan's got his military training, and Thomas has always been the level-headed one in a crisis." I nodded, wanting to believe her but unable to shake the cold dread that had settled in my stomach. I just hope they find him before he does something irreversible. Inside, Rebecca had curled up in an armchair, her phone clutched in her hand, jumping at every notification. For all her complicity in Jacob's schemes, she was clearly terrified, both for him and of him. "Try to rest," I suggested, bringing her a blanket. "It will be hours before we hear anything." She looked up at me, her carefully maintained makeup now streaked with tears. "Why are you being kind to me? After everything we tried to do to you?" I considered the question seriously. "Because right now, kindness is what's needed. Blame and recriminations can wait." "I don't deserve it," she whispered. "Probably not," I agreed. "But that's the thing about kindness. It isn't about deserving." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You sound like my grandmother. She was the only one who saw through my act." I sat across from her, curious despite everything. "What act?" Rebecca's gaze drifted to the window. "The perfect wife, the social climber." The woman who married for status and security rather than love. Did you marry for those things rather than love? She didn't answer directly. Do you know what attracted me to Jacob initially? His confidence, his ambition, the way he talked about the family business like it was already his personal empire. A bitter laugh escaped her. I thought I was securing my future with a successful business leader. Instead, I tied myself to a house of cards. I said nothing, letting her continue. I knew he resented you, she admitted. The way you maintained control of the trust even after Robert died. I encouraged that resentment because I wanted the money too. Wanted the lifestyle, the security. She twisted her wedding ring. But I never thought he'd go this far. Never imagined he was actually stealing. The spending, though, I prompted. The lifestyle beyond your means. You must have wondered where the money was coming from. Rebecca's shoulders slumped. I told myself it was business success, company growth. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want the answers. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. You have choices now, I told her. About what happens next. About who you want to be in this family's story. She looked at me with genuine surprise. You still consider me family? Even now? You're the mother of my grandchildren, I replied simply. That connection doesn't disappear, even when trust is broken. Before she could respond, Sophia called from the kitchen where she'd been monitoring her laptop. Mom, there's something you need to see. I joined her at the kitchen table where she had pulled up a local news website. The headline made my heart sink. Sullivan Construction CEO under investigation for financial irregularities. It's already public, I murmured, skimming the article. Someone had leaked information about tomorrow's board meeting and the audit findings. Rebecca appeared behind us, gasping as she read over our shoulders. Who would... It doesn't matter. Who leaked it? Sophia interrupted. What matters is Jacob will see this. It changes the calculus completely. She was right. Whatever slim hope Jacob might have had of containing the situation, of finding a way out of the consequences, had just evaporated. His professional reputation, the company position he'd prized so highly, even his freedom, all were now visibly at risk. My phone rang. Nathan. We're at the cabin, he reported, his voice hushed. Jacob's truck is here, but the place is dark. We're approaching carefully. Be safe, I urged. He's likely seen the news by now. What news? I quickly explained about the leak. Nathan swore softly. That complicates things. I'll call back when we know more. The line went dead, leaving us in tense silence. Rebecca had gone absolutely still, her face drained of color. He keeps the guns in a safe in the bedroom, she said mechanically. The combination is our wedding date. The implicit warning sent chills down my spine. I reached for her hand and found it ice cold. Nathan knows how to handle situations like this. He won't let anything happen to Jacob. She nodded, but her eyes remained distant, focused on some private horror only she could see. The minutes crawled by like hours. Sophia made tea, no one. Drank. I paced between the kitchen and the living room. Rebecca remained frozen in her chair, staring at her silent phone. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, each sound like a heartbeat in the quiet house. When my phone finally rang again, we all jumped. It was Daniel this time. We found him, he said, his voice tight with strain. He's alive, but... It's bad, Mom. My legs nearly gave out. I sank into a chair. What happened? He'd been drinking heavily. When we arrived, he was unconscious, empty pill bottle nearby. Nathan's administering first aid while Thomas coordinates with emergency services. Pills? I whispered, horror washing through me. He tried to... We don't know for sure, Daniel interrupted. But yes, it looks that way. Rebecca had moved. Beside me, close enough to hear. She made a strangled sound and collapsed to her knees, her face buried in her hands. The ambulance is on its way, Daniel continued. It'll take them about 30 minutes to reach us. Nathan's got him stabilized for now. I'm coming, I decided immediately. Which hospital will they take him to? Northside Regional, most likely. But Mom, it's a 2-hour drive for you. I don't care. I'm coming. After ending the call, I turned to Sophia. Can you drive us? She was already grabbing her keys. Of course. Rebecca looked up, her face streaked with tears. Us? You're coming too, I said firmly. He'll need you when he wakes up. The drive to Northside Regional Hospital was a blur of highway lights and tense silence. Sophia drove with focused determination, pushing the speed limit while still maintaining safety. Rebecca sat in the back seat, oscillating between silent tears and frantic phone calls to arrange care for her children. I stared out the passenger window, watching the darkened landscape rush by and wondering how we had arrived at this point. My son, my firstborn, the baby I had cradled and nurtured, the boy I had guided and encouraged, had become so lost, so desperate, that he had tried to end his own life rather than face the consequences of his actions. Where had the path diverged? When had ambition curdled into entitlement and entitlement into desperation? We arrived at the hospital just after midnight. The emergency department was relatively quiet, the harsh fluorescent lights creating pools of sickly illumination in the otherwise dimly lit waiting area. Nathan met us at the entrance, his military, composure strained but holding. They're pumping his stomach now, he reported. He was semi-conscious when the ambulance arrived. Paramedics said we got to him just in time. Relief swept through me, so powerful it nearly brought me to my knees. He's going to live? Nathan nodded. The doctor's cautiously optimistic. They're running toxicology now to determine exactly what he took and how much. Rebecca pushed forward. I need to see him. Not yet, Nathan said gently. They're still working on him. And when he's stable, they'll be placing him on a psychiatric hold. Her face crumpled. A psychiatric hold? Standard procedure for suicide attempts, he explained. Usually 72 hours of observation and evaluation. Thomas and Daniel appeared from a nearby hallway, both looking exhausted but relieved to see us. The police want statements from all of us, Thomas said, about how we found him, the circumstances leading up to it. I nodded numbly. The practical aspects, police reports, medical decisions, legal implications, felt distant and unreal compared to the central, overwhelming fact. My son had tried to take his own life. A doctor approached our group, clipboard in hand. Family. Of Jacob Sullivan? We all turned toward her, a unified front despite everything. I'm his mother, I said, stepping forward. And this is his wife. The doctor, Dr. Chen according to her name badge, nodded professionally. Mr. Sullivan is stable. We've removed as much of the substances from his system as possible, and are providing supportive care. The next 24 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. What did he take? Rebecca asked, her voice barely audible. A combination of prescription sleeping medication and alcohol. A dangerous combination. When can we see him? I asked. He's being transferred to the ICU for overnight monitoring. Once he's settled, 2 visitors at a time will be permitted briefly. I should warn you, he's been sedated and may not be fully responsive. After Dr. Chen left, we settled into the waiting area. Thomas arranged for coffee and sandwiches. No, one had the appetite to eat. Nathan continued coordinating with the police officers who had arrived to take statements. Daniel stepped outside to update Olivia, who was trying to get emergency coverage for her hospital shift so she could join us. Sophia sat beside me, her artistic hands clasped tightly in her lap. It's not your fault, Mom. I turned to her, startled by how directly she had read my thoughts. I keep wondering what I missed, I admitted. What signs I should have seen earlier. Jacob made his choices, she said firmly. Each step of the way, he had opportunities to change course, to ask for help, to come clean. He chose deception and manipulation instead. But why? I whispered. What makes one child turn out so differently from the others? Sophia considered this, her artist's perspective seeking patterns where others might see only chaos. Maybe it was being the oldest, the weight of expectations, especially from Dad. Maybe it was temperament. Jacob was always more driven, more obsessed with status and recognition than the rest of us. I nodded slowly. Jacob had indeed been different from the beginning. More demanding, more sensitive to perceived slights, more focused on external validation. Or maybe, Sophia continued gently, it's not about any one factor. Maybe it's 1,000 tiny moments and choices that gradually create a person's character. A nurse appeared at the waiting room entrance. Mrs. Sullivan, your son is settled in ICU now. 2 visitors can come back. Rebecca stood immediately. I rose more slowly, turning to my other children. The rest of you should go home, get some rest. There's nothing more you can do tonight. We're staying, Nathan said firmly, the others nodding in agreement. At least until we know he's out of danger, Thomas added. Their solidarity, not just with me but with their troubled brother despite everything, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, I managed. Rebecca and I followed the nurse through the maze of hospital corridors to the ICU. The antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. It all brought back painful memories of Robert's final days, the vigil we had kept as his heart gradually failed. Now I was keeping vigil for my son, but under circumstances I could never have imagined. Jacob lay unnaturally still in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and IVs. His face was pale, the lines of stress and anger that had become so familiar, in recent months now smoothed away by unconsciousness. He looked younger somehow, vulnerable in a way he hadn't allowed himself to be in decades. Rebecca rushed to his side, taking his hand and whispering his name. I stayed back, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, relief that he was alive, anger at what he had put us all through, and a profound sadness for the broken man before me. I'll give you a moment, the nurse said quietly, before stepping out. Rebecca looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand how it came to this, she said. How we ended up here. I moved closer to the bed, studying my son's face. One compromise at a time, I said softly. One justification after another. Until the path back seemed impossible. Is it? She asked. Impossible, I mean? I reached out tentatively, brushing a strand of hair from Jacob's forehead, a gesture I hadn't made since he was a child. No, difficult certainly. There will be consequences he can't escape, but not impossible. For the first time, I allowed myself to fully consider what came next. Jacob would face legal challenges related to the company fraud. His professional reputation was in tatters. His marriage was strained to breaking. His relationship with his siblings was damaged. And the trust he had so desperately sought to control would now, ironically, be partially used to fund his legal defense and recovery. Life had come full circle in the cruelest way possible. We sat with Jacob until the nurse gently indicated our time was up. As we walked back to the waiting area, Rebecca suddenly stopped in the hallway. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice strained. About the night before all this happened. I waited, sensing the importance of whatever confession was coming. Jacob said something about making sure you couldn't change your mind, about documents he'd prepared that would settle things once and for all. I didn't know what he meant. Then, but now with everything that's happened, A cold weight settled in my stomach. You think he forged something? Documents related to the trust? She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. He has a safe at his office. Private papers he never… Let me see, I think. I think he might have been planning something desperate even before the audit revelations. Thank you for telling me, I said, already mentally adding this to the growing list of issues we would need to address when the immediate crisis had passed. We rejoined the others in the waiting room, where Olivia had now arrived as well, still in her hospital scrubs. The family circle was nearly complete. Only Matthew and Christopher were absent, though both were reportedly on their way. As the night deepened into early morning, nurses brought blankets and directed us to the more comfortable family waiting room on the ICU floor. My children took turns keeping watch while others dozed in chairs or on couches. Rebecca eventually fell into an exhausted sleep, her head resting uncomfortably against the wall. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I found myself in the small chapel off the main corridor, sitting alone in the dimly lit quiet. It wasn't about religious observance, though Robert and I had raised the children with a foundation of faith, but about finding a moment of stillness amid the chaos. Howard Thompson found me there just after dawn, his weathered face lined with concern. Patricia called me, he explained, sitting beside me. Thought you might need a friend. I smiled tiredly. She was right. How is he? Stable. They think he'll recover physically. The rest. I trailed off, uncertain how to even begin addressing the emotional and legal aftermath that awaited us. Howard nodded understanding. One step at a time. We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. I brought something for you to consider. He handed me a business card. Dr. Eleanor James. She specializes in family, mediation, and trauma recovery, particularly in cases where financial exploitation has occurred. I turned the card over in my hands. You think reconciliation is possible, after everything? I think healing is possible, he clarified. Whether that includes reconciliation depends on many factors, including Jacob's willingness to take responsibility for his actions. And if he won't? Howard's expression turned serious. Then you'll need to establish clear boundaries for your own protection and peace of mind. That's something Eleanor can help with too. I tucked the card into my pocket, grateful for the practical suggestion amid the emotional turmoil. Thank you. You're welcome. He stood, offering his hand to help me up. Now, how about some real coffee? The hospital cafeteria just opened, and I'm told their breakfast isn't half bad. His mundane suggestion, coffee, breakfast, the simple rituals of daily life, felt like an anchor in a storm. A reminder that even in crisis, life continued. Needs must be met. Days would follow nights. I'd like that, I said, taking his hand. As we walked toward the cafeteria, I glanced out the windows lining the corridor. The sun was rising, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day was beginning, one that would bring challenges and decisions I couldn't yet anticipate. But for the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a fragile sense of hope. Not that everything would magically resolve, or that the damage could be easily undone, but that we would find a path forward, even through this darkest of valleys. My family had been fractured, tested, and transformed. The trust that had been meant to support and nurture had become a flashpoint for conflict and betrayal. But perhaps, now, with the illusions stripped away and the truth laid bare, we could begin to rebuild something authentic, something based not on money or control, but on genuine care and respect. It wouldn't be easy. Some relationships might never fully recover. The legal and financial consequences of Jacob's actions would reverberate for years to come. But we would face those challenges together, with clear eyes and open hearts. I thought of Robert then, of what he would say if he could see us now. He had always believed in second chances, in the possibility of redemption even after grave mistakes. He had built his business on that principle, hiring people others had written off, believing in their capacity to change and grow. Howard touched my elbow gently, bringing me back to the present moment. "One day at a time, Martha," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "That's all any of us can do." I nodded, squaring my shoulders as we entered the cafeteria where Nathan and Sophia were already waiting, fatigue evident in their postures but determination still shining in their eyes. My children. My legacy. Not the money or property I would leave behind, but these human beings I had raised. Their character. Their resilience. Their capacity for compassion even in the face of betrayal. That was the true trust I had been entrusted with. And despite everything, as I looked at them gathered around the table, I knew it remained intact. Spring came to Oak Ridge with its customary gentleness. The cherry trees in my front yard burst into pale pink blossoms, and the daffodils I'd planted along the walkway nodded their bright yellow heads in the April breeze. 6 months had passed since that terrible night at the hospital. 6 months of healing, reckoning, and cautious rebuilding. I sat on the porch swing Robert had hung 20 years ago, Rusty dozing at my feet, watching Howard Thompson's car pull into my driveway. In the months since Jacob's crisis, Howard had become a steady presence in my life. First as a supportive friend during the legal proceedings, then gradually as something more. Today, he was accompanying me to Jacob's outpatient therapy graduation, a milestone none of us had been certain would ever arrive. "Beautiful morning," Howard remarked as he joined me on the swing, the wood creaking softly beneath our combined weight. "How are you feeling about today?" I took a deep breath, appreciating his directness. "Hopeful, cautious, a bit nervous." "All perfectly reasonable," he assured me, his hand finding mine on the swing between us. "It's a significant day." After 3 months of inpatient treatment for depression and alcohol dependency, followed by intensive outpatient therapy, Jacob was completing his formal recovery program. The journey had been neither straight nor easy. There had been setbacks, resistance, and moments of despair. But there had also been breakthroughs, accountability, and gradual, hard-won healing. "Did you finish the letter?" Howard asked gently. I nodded. Dr. Eleanor James, the family trauma specialist Howard had recommended, had suggested I write Jacob a letter expressing both my enduring love and my clear boundaries. The exercise had taken weeks as I struggled to find the balance between compassion and accountability. "I'm still not sure it says everything it should," I admitted. "It says what you can authentically express right now," Howard reminded me. "That's enough." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching a robin build her nest in the maple tree. So much had changed in 6 months, yet nature's rhythms remained constant, a reminder that renewal always followed even the harshest winter. The legal consequences of Jacob's actions had been severe, but not as catastrophic as they might have been. With Thomas leading the company audit and Christopher managing legal strategy, we had been able to address the financial fraud without destroying Sullivan Construction entirely. Jacob had resigned as CEO, surrendered his equity stake to repay misappropriated funds, and entered a plea agreement that included restitution, community service, and probation rather than imprisonment. The personal consequences had been more complex. Rebecca had filed for separation during Jacob's inpatient treatment, though she remained committed to facilitating his relationship with their children. The family trust had been restructured again, with Patricia Morgan's help, to provide support for Jacob's recovery while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Most importantly, Jacob had gradually begun to accept responsibility for his actions, without the deflection and blame that had characterized his behavior for so long. "It's time," Howard noted, checking his watch. "The ceremony starts at 11. I nodded, gathering my purse and the carefully sealed letter. As we walked to Howard's car, I glanced back at the house, the home where I had raised 8 children. weathered widowhood, and finally reclaimed my independence. It remained my sanctuary, but no longer my prison. The past months had taught me that home wasn't just a physical place, but a state of being centered in my own strength and choices. The recovery center was located on the outskirts of town, a cluster of modern buildings nestled among pine trees. The parking lot was nearly full when we arrived, families gathering to celebrate their loved ones' milestones in recovery. Nathan and Sophia were waiting for us by the entrance. Of all my children, they had remained the most consistently involved in Jacob's recovery process, attending family therapy sessions and providing practical support while maintaining appropriate boundaries. "Everyone else is already inside," Sophia reported, giving me a quick hug. "Even Rebecca and the kids came. And Daniel flew in from Chicago last night," Nathan added. "Thomas couldn't make it, some crisis at the company, but he sent a video message." I nodded, grateful for their updates and for the show of family support, however tentative or qualified it might be. Not everyone had been able to forgive Jacob, and some relationships remained strained. Christopher, in particular, had maintained a professional distance, handling legal aspects of Jacob's case, but declining to engage personally until he saw sustained evidence of genuine change. "How does he seem today?" I asked as we walked toward the main hall. "Nervous," Sophia replied honestly, "but present, grounded, very different from the Jacob we knew 6 months ago." Inside, the ceremony was already taking shape. About 20 graduates sat in a semicircle at the front of the room, their families and supporters filling rows of chairs behind them. I spotted Jacob immediately, his posture straighter than I remembered, his face leaner but healthier, his expression attentive rather than distracted or defensive. Our eyes met across the room. After a moment's hesitation, he raised his hand in a small wave, a gesture simultaneously cautious and hopeful. I returned it, emotion tightening my throat. Howard's hand settled reassuringly at the small of my back as we found seats alongside Daniel, Olivia, Matthew, and Emma. Christopher's absence was noticeable, but understood. Each of my children had needed to find their own path through the family crisis, their own timeline for processing Jacob's betrayal and subsequent recovery. The ceremony itself was simple and moving. Graduates received certificates and shared brief reflections on their journey. When Jacob's turn came, he spoke with a humility I had never heard from him before. "6 months ago, I had everything I thought I wanted: status, money, power, and I was utterly empty inside," he began. "I was willing to hurt the people who loved me most to maintain the illusion of success. I lied, manipulated, and betrayed the trust of my family, colleagues, and friends." He paused, visibly gathering himself. "My mother raised 8 children, alone after my father died. She sacrificed everything for us, never complained, always put our needs first. And how did I repay that lifetime of love? By treating her as an obstacle to my entitlement, by trying to seize control of what was rightfully hers." My eyes filled with tears as he continued. "Recovery isn't just about sobriety from substances. It's about sobriety from self-deception, from toxic entitlement, from the belief that rules don't apply to you." He looked directly at me. "I have a long road ahead to rebuild trust, if that's even possible. But today, I'm committed to walking that road one step at a time, with honesty, accountability, and genuine remorse." The gathering applauded as he returned to his seat. I found myself clapping through tears, complicated emotions washing through me, pride in his progress, caution born of past disappointments, hope for what might still be possible. After the ceremony concluded, there was a reception with refreshments. Jacob approached our family group slowly, respectful of the boundaries that had been established during his treatment. He greeted each of his siblings individually, accepting with grace when some embraced him while others offered only handshakes. When he reached me, he stopped, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Thank you for coming, Mom." "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied simply. "Could we talk privately for a few minutes?" he asked, glancing at Howard. "If that's comfortable for you." I nodded, and Howard squeezed my hand before stepping away to give us space. Jacob and I moved to a quiet corner of the reception area, sitting on a bench beneath a window. "You look well," I offered, studying his face. The arrogance that had once defined his expression was gone, replaced by something more authentic, more human. "I feel clearer," he said after a moment. "For the first time in maybe decades." I nodded, understanding what he meant. Clarity had been my journey too. Seeing truthfully where boundaries had been crossed, where enabling had replaced true support, where my own desires and needs had been submerged beneath family obligations. "I have something for you," I said, reaching into my purse for the letter. "Dr. James suggested I write it." Jacob accepted the envelope with careful hands. "Should I read it now?" "Later might be better," I suggested, "when you have time to reflect." He tucked it into his jacket pocket. "I appreciate that you're here, after everything I put you through. I wouldn't have blamed you if you'd never wanted to see me again." "You're my son," I said simply. "That hasn't changed, even when everything else did." "I've been working on making amends," he continued. "Not just apologies, though God knows those are necessary, but actual changes, tangible efforts to address the harm I've caused." "I've heard," I acknowledged. Sullivan Construction, now led by a board-appointed CEO with Thomas's oversight, had begun implementing ethics reforms and repaying clients who had been overcharged. Jacob had voluntarily surrendered his professional licenses and begun training for work as a recovery peer counselor, a humbler path focused on service rather than status. "I know I can never fully repair what I've broken," he said, his voice catching. "With you, with Rebecca, with my siblings. But I'm committed to trying, for whatever that's worth." I studied him, searching for the authenticity in his words. The old Jacob had been skilled at performance, at telling people what they wanted to hear. This Jacob seemed different, rawer, more vulnerable, but also more genuine. "It's worth a great deal," I said finally. "But trust takes time to rebuild." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I've been learning about patience, about earning things rather than taking them." A comfortable silence settled between us, different from the tense, expectant silences that had characterized our interactions in the past. This quiet felt like space, room for new possibilities to grow. "Rebecca mentioned you might move to an apartment near her place," I said eventually. "To be closer to the children." He nodded. "If she's comfortable with that." I'm trying to follow her lead, respect her boundaries. The kids need stability, and I need to demonstrate consistency over time. His awareness of others' needs, not as obstacles to his desires but as valid considerations in their own right, struck me as perhaps the most significant change. The son who had once viewed everyone as either useful or in his way now seemed genuinely attuned to the impact of his actions on those around him. "One day at a time," I offered, echoing the recovery mantra I'd heard so often in family sessions. "One day at a time," he agreed. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "How are you doing, Mom? Really?" The question surprised me, not because it was inappropriate, but because the old Jacob had rarely expressed genuine interest in my well-being, except as it related to his own needs or agenda. "I'm doing well," I answered honestly. "The past months have been challenging but clarifying. I've learned a lot about myself, about what I want for this chapter of my life." "And Howard seems like a good man," Jacob observed, glancing across the room where Howard was chatting easily with Nathan. "He is," I confirmed, a smile warming my face. A true friend who became something more when I wasn't looking for it. Jacob nodded thoughtfully. You deserve that. Happiness, companionship, all of it. The simple acknowledgement of my right to my own life, my own joy, felt like a small miracle coming from the son who had once sought to control my every decision. Our conversation was interrupted by one of Jacob's counselors, who needed him for a group photo. As he stood to leave, he hesitated, then asked, "Would it be all right if I called you sometime this week? Just to talk?" "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. As Jacob rejoined his recovery group, Howard made his way back to my side. "How did it go?" he asked, no trace of jealousy or insecurity in his question. "Better than I expected," I admitted. "He seems different, more present, more aware." "Recovery is a process, not an event," Howard reminded me, quoting one of Dr. James's frequent sayings, "for all of you." He was right, of course. None of us would ever return to who we had been before this family crisis. The trust, both the legal document and the emotional bond, had been irrevocably altered. But perhaps what emerged could be healthier, more authentic, and ultimately more nurturing than what had existed before. As we prepared to leave the ceremony, my children gathered around me in the spring sunshine. They had weathered this storm together despite their differences, finding strength in unity even as they honored their individual boundaries and needs. I looked at each of their faces, Daniel's thoughtful reserve, Olivia's compassionate alertness, Matthew's quiet steadiness, Emma's emotional openness, Christopher's principled distance, Thomas's practical problem-solving, Sophia's artistic sensitivity, Nathan's protective vigilance, and yes, even Jacob's newfound humility. 8 children, each unique, each carrying forward some aspect of Robert and me, yet each entirely their own person with their own path to walk. "Lunch at Copper Kettle?" Daniel suggested. My treat. The others nodded, moving toward their cars with the casual coordination of a family accustomed to navigating together. As Howard and I followed, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more difficult conversations, more moments of reckoning with the past. But today, in this moment, I could see the outline of a new future taking shape, one built not on obligation or control or fear, but on mutual respect and genuine care. "Ready?" Howard asked, opening the car door for me. I smiled, taking his hand. "Yes, I think I am." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.